Hi my fellow potters, Marie here from Pottery Crafters. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a plate with a lip and a foot on the pottery wheel and show you the finished piece with some helpful tips along the way. All the supplies used in this video are listed for you below in the show notes. Let's make a plate. I have 2 pounds of Amico number 11 A-Mix stoneware white clay. So I have enough clay on the bottom to create a foot on the plate. Always wedge your clay. This step is essential because it smooths the lumps and dry patches and removes any air bubbles that can make throwing difficult. Wet the bat with a damp sponge and slap the clay down firmly so it sticks to the bat or the wheel, and center the clay, keeping my elbows anchored to my thighs. Then press the clay down with the wheel speed medium-high to high. Cone up the clay. I like going faster. I found I have more control over the clay when the wheel is turning faster while I'm centering. I wet a sponge and tuck it in between my palm and thumb, bracing my left hand on the side while the side of my right palm presses down on the top. When the clay starts to drag or stick, I just give the sponge a little squeeze so I don't have to lift my hands until it's perfectly centered. Now instead of opening the clay, I continue to press straight down to set the base of the plate. Now I widen the form into a flat plate using both hands and my sponge. Add water anytime your hands, sponge, or tools start to drag on the clay. I continue widening the floor into a shallow, even disc. As I expand, I bring extra clay outward towards the rim. With steady medium wheel speed and constant pressure from both hands, my fingers are pushing the clay outward, moving my fingers back and forth in the center area to prevent a bump from forming in the center of the plate. Now using a sponge, moving the clay inward and outward, applying a good amount of pressure, I ease the clay outward a little at a time, being careful not to remove too much clay from the base of the plate, and making sure I have enough clay brought to the side to form a lip on the rim of the plate. Continue to smooth out the clay with the sponge. The clay should be flat. This motion is automatically compressing the clay and aligning the particles to avoid cracks. See how much clay I have on the edge of the plate to form the lip on the rim? I pinch gently from just inside the edge while the outside hand supports lifting the small wall. With my inside fingers gliding and my outside fingers supporting, I begin to shape the plate and form the lip, moving the clay outward and slightly upward to create the defined lip. Compress the rim. I'm using a wooden rib to smooth the clay base, which stays flat and strong. I smooth from the center to the rim in overlapping passes. Consistent sweeps removes any marks. Then make one last slow compression pass from the center to the rim. I use the rib on the outside of the plate to remove any slip. Once the plate is a soft leather hard and firm enough to touch, but still a touch flexible, I can remove it from the bat. Squeeze a little water on the bat so the wire glides through the clay easier. Holding the wire tight and level, place the index fingers on each end of the wire as I run the wire straight across from the top of the bat to me. Using a wear board, carefully lift the plate off the bat and onto the wear board. Scrape the remaining clay off the bat with a wooden rib. I found the wooden rib works the best for this. See all the extra clay left behind? That's also why you need a thicker bottom. Once the plate is in a firmer leather hard, it's ready to trim. I'm using the Giffen grip to trim. Quick tip, because the Giffen grip fills most of the splash pan area, I loosen both sides of the splash pan a little so the clay scraps can drop into it. Yes, it leaves small gaps on the sides, but it actually catches more clay, and fewer scraps hit the floor. Center the plate upside down. Bring the holders in evenly until they're snug. Just enough grip to hold without distorting the rim of the plate. I start by evening out the edge of the foot, with the wheel at a slow to medium speed using a sharp trim tool. Now I lay out the foot ring. Cut a shallow moat with the tip of my trim tool to define the inside of the foot. Start in the middle and spiral your way out to the inner mark of your foot. Remove any extra clay from the trimming area and into the splash pan. Take another run through with the trim tool on its edge. Start in the middle and spiral out again. With the flat part of the trim tool, I'm getting rid of the spiral marks. I found this technique helps to prevent gouging. Stop to tap the center. You'll hear the difference in the thickness of the clay as you trim. That will come with practice, so start doing it right away. I like to put a foot on my plates whenever I can, so the whole plate doesn't touch the surface of the table, creating insulation. Plus, I can glaze the middle, creating even more insulation. Now make a spiral again until you get the desired thickness, holding the trim tool with both hands. You don't want to take too much clay off because the trim tool can gouge into the clay and take too much off the bottom. If you don't have a Giffen grip and you're interested in using one, I have a full review of the Giffen grip and the Giffen grip mini. What I like about them, how they compare, and tips for getting a perfect hold. I left a link for you below in the show notes. You can hit the like button anytime during this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever a new video comes out. Tap the bottom of the plate again. Sounds thick enough. The same as the side of the plate. Now trim the side of the inside of the foot, keeping the trim tool steady and firm. Let the tool do the work, nice and smooth, evening out the top. Go over the middle one more time to smooth out the bottom. I like to put a little swirl in the middle, or you can leave the bottom smooth if you like. It's your personal choice. There are actually 3 stages of leather hard: soft, medium, and stiff. The soft works well for me when I'm removing the pottery from the bat or the wheel. The medium leather hard is best for trimming. When the clay is drying, you always hit that sweet spot. I have a post on my Pottery Crafters website that goes over all of the stages of clay. I have the link for you below in the show notes. While the clay is still in the leather hard stage, I'm going to apply underglaze using a silk screen. For this plate, I'm using this tree silk screen and spectrum yellow, lime green, and bright blue underglazes. Before applying the underglaze to the silk screen, it's really important to get the consistency just right. You want the underglaze to be about the consistency of cream cheese. If your underglaze is too thick, it won't push through the mesh of the silk screen, leaving you with spotty or broken patterns. If it's too thick, you can add water, but just a touch at a time. If it's too thin, it'll run underneath the silkscreen and blur the design. If the underglaze is too thin, you can loosen the cap and let it dry out some more. If you don't have that kind of time, you can use a medium. This one is by Mako. You don't need much. Mix until you get the right thickness. Make sure the silkscreen is flat on this surface and doesn't move. Now rub the underglaze through the screen. I'm partially mixing them for a more marbled effect, giving the tree more depth. If you'd like more detailed information on how to use silkscreens, I have a great video on applying silkscreen to 4 stages of clay. Feel free to check it out. It's in the show notes below and on the end screen. Lift and see how it turned out. Check for any bare spots. If so, carefully place the silkscreen back onto the surface and rub more underglaze in the area. Keep checking until the underglaze comes through. That's the nice part about these silkscreens. There's room for error. You can lift it on and off the plate as long as you keep it in the same spot. The colors broke up nicely in this pattern. Now that everything's completely bone dry, I'm ready to load the kiln for the bisque firing. When loading silkscreened or any underglaze pieces, you want to be extra careful and make sure the underglaze isn't touching any other clay. If it does, the underglaze will transfer onto the piece it's touching during the firing. I'm flipping this plate over and gently setting another on top. There's no underglaze transfer risk as long as the underglaze isn't making contact. That's one of the downsides of using underglaze on greenware. You can't stack as much as you could with plain clay. But there are still ways to be creative with the space. I'll fire to cone 04 with no hold, which is the recommended bisque temperature for glazing these pieces. Now that the bisque firing is complete, it's time to prep the pieces for glazing. Make sure your hands are clean and dry, or you can wear gloves. I always start by wiping my bisqueware with a clean damp sponge. This helps remove any leftover ceramic dust or debris that might be sitting on the surface and may interfere with the glaze during the glaze firing. Now it's time to apply the wax resist. Carefully brushing the wax resist onto the bottom of the bisque plate around the foot ring. Wax resist makes it much easier to remove any glaze before firing. I'm using the Speedball Clear Glaze. Before applying any glaze, it's important to mix it really well. I'm using my Hamilton Beach blender, which is my absolute favorite for mixing jars of glaze. I always pour the glaze through a strainer before applying it to my pottery. This step catches any remaining clumps that could leave lumps on the finished surface. Applying the first coat of the clear glaze, it gives great coverage. Rotate the plate on a banding wheel to make sure I get the full even coverage without overlapping too much. I really love how the Speedball Clear Glaze goes on pink. It makes it easy to see where I've already glazed. Make sure the glaze overlaps slightly but not too much. This keeps the finish consistent without building up in any one area. Brush a thin, even coat with the soft fan brush. Light pressure, and even coverage. Let this dry. Now for the second coat of clear glaze. The second coat goes on much smoother than the first. That's because the first coat has already sealed the surface a bit, giving the glaze a base to glide over. I'm being careful not to apply it too thick. If clear glaze is too heavy, it can come out cloudy or milky after firing. I'm only applying 2 coats total, which is usually just right for clear glaze. Before loading into the kiln, I always wipe off any glaze from the bottom of the pottery. Even a small amount of glaze on the bottom can fuse the piece to your kiln shelf. So this is an essential step. Now it's all set to dry completely before going into the kiln for a glaze fire. I'm firing this load to cone 5, which is a great temperature for mid-fire clear glazes like this one I'm using. I've set it to hold at peak temperature for just 10 minutes. That small hold helps ensure the heat distributes evenly throughout the kiln. Well, the plate turned out great. I love the design that the silkscreen created. Silkscreens are really fun and easy to work with. And the foot turned out really nice. Just remember to have enough clay on the bottom for trimming. I like having a lip on the plate. Nice for pasta. Of course, I made several plates, and each one is pretty unique. That's the beautiful part of crafting pottery. Now you'll be able to make a plate with a lip and a foot and decorate it the way you want. Silkscreens are pretty cool though. Nice and easy to make, especially if you're not good at drawing. You watching helps me to make more videos like this one. Now head on over to my testing silkscreens on 4 different stages of clay video, or my 7 glaze combinations to try. If you do, I get to play with more clay. Let's stay dirty